had some people tell me they wanted to get a little more information on my riding history and the bikes I've ridden and some of the bikes I've raced and things like that. So I thought I would go through a quick list and talk about each bike to a degree if I can. I don't really have time to talk about every one because we'd be here for a couple hours. But some of the race bikes in particular I'd like to talk a little bit about. My first motorcycle was an ME70 Indian. It was an Italian-built motorcycle. It was badged by Indian, two-stroke, 70 cc's, and I rode the snot out of that motorcycle. I did all kind of things on that. It was like an all-purpose kind of bike. It was a dual sport back then. They called them enduro bikes. Street legal dirt bike. Didn't have a lot of horsepower, but I tell you what, it was pretty sturdy considering what I put it through. I had an XL 125 Honda. Then I got into racing motocross, and my first motocross bike was a 125 Elsinore. I think it was a 73 model. And then I got a 76 YZ 125. And then I got a 77 RM 125. I raced motocross on all those. I didn't really start racing again until I got out of college. I bought a XR200 Honda and started running enduros and hare scrambles. You know, when I grew up, we had motocross tracks. We had off-road riding was fairly abundant. We had tracks all around us, dirt motocross tracks and places to go run enduros and hare scrambles. But road racing was something that they did in California or Florida. I just met a really nice guy, had a place in Shreveport called Architect Cycle Exchange. His name was John Towson. And John had just started road racing. He bought a 600 Hurricane, one of the first 600 Hurricanes that came out. And that got me really interested in checking it out. Boy, he had a pristine 500 Interceptor. It was one of the maroon models. He took a liking to me for whatever reason, so he sold me the bike and he helped me get some leathers and helped me safety wire it up. The first road race I ever saw, I was in. I took rider school on a Saturday and raced on a Sunday. But John had picked up, he had acquired a GSXR750, one of the first ones. I think it was an 87 model. He sold that to me for what he got it for, which was a song. So we safety wired it, and I raced that for a couple of years. But I bought a 1990 GSXR750, did some Suzuki Cup races, and made a little money, and really enjoyed doing that. And then I got enamored with the Yamaha TZ250. I've always liked two-stroke, especially dirt bikes, and there was just something appealing about a motorcycle that put out, you know, close to a 250cc two-stroke motorcycle that put out close to 70 horsepower and only weighed a smidge over 200 pounds. But I wound up getting rid of the GSXR and picking up a TZ250. Now the TZ250s back then had what they called it was a parallel twin, and it was a reverse motor in the sense that the carburetors were up under the chin of the fairing, and the exhaust ran out straight out the back and straight up under the seat. It was a straight exhaust, but it had a unique look. You had to pull the bottom fairing off to make adjustments to your carbs, which on the TZ250 you had to do constantly. It was real finicky. It's probably in the top 5 best motorcycles I have ever owned and ridden. I mean, just imagine a motorcycle that's that fast, that much horsepower, that weighs that little. It was just amazing to ride. The problem was, unless you were sponsored and could afford a mechanic, it was maintenance intensive. But I seized it on the bank at Daytona. I seized it. It didn't throw me down there, but it locked up on the banking. I got on the clutch quick enough and fixed that. It seized on me again at Memphis, and it did throw me down there because I was downshifting going into a turn, and then I seized it once again at a track in Texas that was an old airfield out in West Texas that I cannot remember the name of. I only went out there once. Rebuilt it during practice and finished third in that race. First overall in that race was actually a novice by the name of Colin Edwards. You might have heard of him before. I think he won a world championship or two. That was one of the cool things about racing. I got to race with some really good riders. I raced against, like I said, Doug Poland. I raced against Scott Russell. I raced against Colin Edwards. Raced against the Haydens. Of course, they all beat me. After the TZ250, I bought a Honda 600, another Honda 600. And I rode I rode that for about a year and a half. But one of the best races I did on that was I did the 600 Super Sport race before the Daytona 200. And I think there were 80 bikes on the grid, and I wound up mid-pack somewhere around 38, 40, somewhere around there, which, you know, that's nothing to write home about, but it was fun. I wound up getting on television a couple times on the television coverage. And that was nice. Didn't get my name mentioned, but hey, you know, you can't have everything, right? Started racing some races with Armour. I bought a Ducati 750, which started my love affair with the Ducatis. I've pretty much had at least one ever since then. But I had two 750s. I bought a race bike and I bought a street bike. Had a 750 street bike. Raced it for a year or so, and really liked the twins class. Took what little savings I had and bought an 888 race bike that had been raced in Armour, and raced it for about a year, and it was just so much fun to ride. Thank God I never went down on the ground on it, and did pretty well. I wound up, I thought I had third at the WERA Grand National Finals wrapped up, and I blew it on the last lap. And I say I blew it. The guy that got third behind me, the guy third was behind me in fourth and passed me on the last lap, and he outrode me. There's no question about that. I got rid of the 888 and bought a brand new TL1000R Suzuki. Now, those of you not familiar with the TL1000R, it didn't have a conventional suspension in the back. It had a separate shock and dampener box on the back. It was a really, really unusual setup that was real controversial at the time. And I found out why, because my first race on the TL, and this was my fault. I've always wanted to try to blame it on somebody else, but it was really my fault. I set the suspension up wrong. I went out, rode it in practice, and was having some issues with a little bit of head shake. And even though a steering dampener was required, and I'd have one on my bikes anyway, just for safety, I was still getting a little bit of head shake. Memphis, for those of you who don't know anything about it, the track there was a drag strip, and you went down the drag strip. You started on the drag strip. That was the start line, and you went a long way. And you were in 6th gear wide open, and then you would downshift and run a road course and come back, and then you'd go on to the drag strip again. And by the end of it, I mean, you were top speed by the time you were braking for a fairly, not real tight, but a fairly fast sweeping right-hander at the end of the strip. But on the first lap, I was probably in 5th or 6th place, and I came out from the turn heading onto the drag strip, and I think I'm in fourth gear, probably third, fourth gear. I'm not sure exactly what gear I'm in. This has been a long time ago. And it just started tank slapping on me really bad. And after that, I don't remember anything until I woke up in the hospital. They tell me that it ripped the bars out of my hands and threw me down, and I slid into the wall. They wound up cutting my leathers off, pulling my helmet off, and putting me in a helicopter and flying me to the hospital. I didn't race the TL1000 again after that. Matter of fact, that was my last race for a couple years. It's one of those kind of things. That's why I raced a couple times after that crash at Memphis. I didn't want to quit because I was afraid. I didn't want to think, 20 years later, did I chicken out? Did I back out because I had a crash and that scared me, and I quit? So I went back out, rode my races, got my trophies, and then I said, okay, if I quit now, I'm quitting because I want to, not because I'm afraid of it. And that may be a stupid reason, I don't know. But this has just been a little bit of a background in my racing history and my riding history. So whenever I put a video up and I have a review on a motorcycle or a review on a road or a destination, you'll have a little bit of an idea of what my background is and why I think the way I think.